The first bullet took Elias in the throat before the coffee had even boiled. Lenora heard the wet pop, saw her husband drop the tin pot and claw at the sudden red fountain between his fingers. Then the second and third shots punched through the cabin door and she was on the floor. Ears ringing, tasting smoke and blood that wasn't hers. By the time she crawled to the window, the yard was full of men she knew. Caleb Mather, the blacksmith's son, swung a torch into the hay barn. Old man Pritchard, who had prayed over her empty cradle every Sunday, was prying the silver dollars from Elias's dead fist. 6 neighbors in all, faces blacked with charcoal like players in some devil's pageant, laughing as the flames ate 30 years of their labor. Caleb found her hiding behind the rain barrel. He dragged her out by the hair and threw her into the dirt beside Elias's body. "Barren brings bad luck," he said, almost kindly, as if explaining weather. "Everyone knows it. Elias kept you too long." They left her the smoke, the bodies, and a single canteen with a neat bullet hole that dripped its last on the packed earth. Then they rode away whistling, certain the desert would finish the job. Lenora knelt in the ashes until the sun burned the tears off her cheeks. 5 stillbirths, 5 tiny graves behind the corral, and now this. The territory had finally spoken its verdict. She buried Elias under the mesquite with a broken spade, singing the lullaby she had never been allowed to finish. When the grave was shallow and the coyotes began to sing back, she took his colt, his bedroll, and the half-burned wedding photograph that showed her smiling like a fool. Then she walked south, into the country where even the maps gave up. 3 days later the canteen was dry and the sun had cooked her thoughts to soup. She saw ghost children chasing roadrunners across red sand, laughing in a language like hawk bones rattling. She told herself they were fever dreams. She kept walking. On the 4th night, she collapsed against a boulder painted with ancient handprints the color of old blood. The stars were knives. She closed her eyes and waited for the mercy that never came to women like her. Instead, small fingers pried her lips apart and poured something cool and bitter down her throat. "Drink." "Mujer Blanca," a child's voice commanded. "My brother says you are too mean to die." Lenora opened her eyes to a fierce little face framed by tangled black hair and 2 red yarn feathers. The boy was 6 winters at most, barefoot, wearing nothing but a breechcloth and an expression older than sin. Behind him stood a girl, perhaps 9, clutching a woven basket and staring at Lenora with the wary hunger of something. Wild. The boy touched the scar that ran from her collarbone to her breast, the mark of the baby that had killed her on its way out, and asked in careful Spanish, "Did the sky take your baby back?" Lenora could only nod. The girl whispered something in D. The boy answered. Then both children slipped their hands into hers and pulled her upright as if she weighed nothing at all. "Come," the boy said. "Our mother is dead. Our father rides with Newi. The old ones say a woman with no children belongs to the sand. But we voted. You belong to us now." They led her through a hidden notch into a canyon so narrow the sky was a blue scar. Willows grew along a seep, and tucked against a cliff painted with lightning spirals lay a rancheria no white man had ever seen, wickiups of bare grass, storm-colored horses, old women pounding mesquite, and children, dozens of them, whose eyes carried the same ancient WATCHFULNESS. An elder with one blind eye stepped forward and studied Lenora the way a man studies a loaded gun. The boy, he told her his name was Tara, Dragonfly, spoke fast, gesturing at her cracked lips, her burned hands, the empty holster at her hip. The elder asked in slow Spanish, "You have no people?" "None left," Lenora rasped. "You have no children?" The ache rose so sharp she nearly fell. "None living." The elder weighed this. Around them the camp had gone still. Even the dogs watched. Then he nodded once. "You belong to no one." That is dangerous. But these two have claimed you. For 1 moon you stay. When it is full again, the women decide if you are ghost or gift. Tara and his sister Nakitia, Little Rabbit, led her to a small wickiup at the edge of the camp. Inside smelled of cedar smoke and sweetgrass. They brought water and a hummingbird alia, rabbit stew thick with wild onion, and a rabbit skin blanket still warm from the sun. Lenora ate until her stomach hurt. Then she slept for 2 days straight. When she woke, Nakitia was braiding her hair with yucca cord while Tara sharpened a knife no longer than his hand and sang about a woman who became a hawk to hunt her lost babies among the stars. Days turned to weeks. She learned to grind corn until her palms bled, then calloused. She learned that Tara's real name was Hosteen Kla, but only elders used it. She learned Nakitia still woke screaming for the mother who had coughed her lungs out the winter before. When that happened, Lenora did what no white woman had ever been allowed to do. She pulled the child close and rocked her until the dark retreated. She expected hatred. Instead, the women began to teach her how to find water under stone, how to speak the soft throat sounds of D, how to weave a basket that would not cut your shoulders raw. Only one person never softened. Chato, lean, scarred, 30 winters, hawk feather in his long hair and eyes like winter water, was the children's uncle. Every time Lenora passed, his gaze tracked her the way a wolf tracks a limp. One afternoon he blocked the door of the wickiup. The children were away gathering pinnin. "You think feeding you makes you one of us?" he asked in knife-sharp Spanish. "Your people burned villages. One day you will remember whose blood you carry and you will kill these children in their sleep." Lenora met his stare. Grief had burned the fear out of her long ago. "I have no blood left to remember," she said. "Only the two who pulled me from the sand. If that is not enough, kill me now." The canyon held its breath. Then Chato spat at her feet and walked away. But that night, when Nakitia woke screaming, he did not stop Lenora from gathering the child close. On the night of the full moon, the women circled the fire. Lenora stood barefoot in a doeskin dress Nakitia had sewn, pale hair braided with earned eagle feathers. The head woman Bimieti Jew drew 4 yellow pollen lines across her cheeks, marks of protection, marks of belonging. Later, drunk on belonging and cedar smoke, Lenora stepped outside to breathe. A shadow detached from the cottonwoods, army blue coat, campaign hat, cavalry scout with the sharps across his saddle. "Mrs. Hawthorne," he whispered. $500 gold to point the army at Geronimo's rat hole. Ride out tonight. Start over." He reached for her arm. From the dark doorway, Nakitia whimpered in her sleep. Lenora raised Elias's reloaded Colt and pressed it to the scout's forehead. "Ride north," she said, soft as death. "If I ever see you again, I will kill you myself." The scout fled. Chato spoke from the shadows. "So the white woman chooses." Lenora turned. Moonlight silvered the scars on his bare chest. "I chose," she said. "The night dragonfly poured water down my throat." Chato studied her for a long time. Then he nodded, once small, earth-shifting. "Sleep," he said. "I will watch till dawn." That night Tara curled against her like a puppy. One small arm flung across the place that had never held life. Lenora lay awake listening to the breathing of the children, who had voted her alive. And somewhere outside, the soft footfalls of the man who had finally decided she might be worth guarding. 300 miles north. 27 hard men were already saddling up. Guided by the scout's map and the promise of army gold, the desert was about to test whether a barren woman could truly become a mother or whether love, once chosen, could survive the fire a second time. The first rifle shot split the canyon at the exact moment the false dawn turned the sky the color of dried blood. Lenora was already on her feet, grinding corn beside the seep when the echo rolled down the red walls like a war drum. Before it died, Shadow was beside her, bare-chested, long black hair loose, war paint streaking his face like fresh wounds. He pressed a Winchester into her hands as if it belonged there. "Bilagana," he said, the word a snarl and a warning. 27 riders. They bought the scout's tongue with gold. Na-ki-th burst from the Wickiup clutching the rag doll Lenora had sewn from an old flour sack. Tara followed, small fingers already reaching for the child-sized bow. The warriors let him carry. Lenora's heart slammed against her ribs. She looked toward the canyon mouth, one narrow slit between red cliffs, the only door in or out. Beanie Eddie Joe appeared, leaning on her mesquite staff. She spoke rapid Ni. Shadow translated without looking at Lenora. "Old ones and children to the Kiva caves above the waterfall. Warriors hold the entrance. You," his obsidian eyes finally found hers, "you come with me." Lenora opened her mouth to refuse. She would not leave the children. But Tara grabbed her hand. "Mama fights with us," he declared in Spanish, fierce as any grown man. "She knows how white men lie." The word mama rang out clear across the camp. Warriors paused. Elders stared. No one corrected the boy. Beanie Jeju touched the fading pollen lines on Lenora's cheeks. "Protect what is yours." There was no time. Mothers were already lifting babies onto their backs, herding children up the hidden switchback behind the waterfall. Lenora kissed Nakitia hard, pressed Tara's face to her breast for one heartbeat, then turned and ran after Chato. They climbed a deer trail that clung to the cliff like desperation. Below, the rancheria vanished, Wickiups collapsed, fires kicked out, horses led into side canyons. In minutes, the place looked abandoned, a trick older than the Spanish dot at the rimrock they dropped flat. Through Manzanita, they watched the posse ride in. Caleb Mather led them, left arm in a sling but eyes burning with the same righteous fire that had torched her barn. The scout in army blue rode beside him, pointing, talking fast. Caleb raised a fist. The riders fanned out. One fired at a fleeing cur dog and laughed when it fell kicking. Chato's knuckles whitened on his rifle. "They will burn what is left. Then they will follow the women." Lenora felt the old rage rise, pure and clean. She touched the colt at her hip. "Then we make them fewer." Chato looked at her, really looked, for the first time since the night she had chosen. Something shifted behind his eyes. "Too many to fight," he said, "but not too many to break." He spoke the plan in short, brutal sentences. Lenora listened, nodded once, and felt the woman she had become settle into her bones like iron. They split. Chato took 3 warriors east along the rim. Lenora crawled west alone through catclaw and creosote until she reached the overhang above the narrow trail, a knife-edge path with a 100-foot drop on one side. She waited, belly to the hot stone, sun baking her back, while below the posse tore the village apart. They found the hidden rifles, whooped, set fire to the Wickiups. Black smoke rose like a signal fire. Then Caleb did what Chato knew he would. Sent 10 men up the waterfall trail after the women and children. Kept the rest to guard horses and loot. The 10 riders started up. Single file, laughing, confident. Lenora rose to her knees, aimed Elias's colt two-handed, and fired into the shale above the trail. The mountain answered. Tons of rock roared down in a red avalanche. Horses screamed. Men vanished over the edge. The trail was buried under a landslide no army engineer could clear in a week. From the far rim came the flat, deadly crack of Apache rifles. Chato's warriors opened fire on the men guarding the horses. Chaos exploded, smoke, dust, the whistle of lead. Lenora slid down the back slope, reloading on the run. She reached the dry wash where Shadow waited with a string of captured posse horses already stripped and loosed to thunder north, drawing every soldier within 50 miles. Shadow's cheek was torn open, blood bright against bronze skin. He looked almost happy. 7 dead, he said. The rest run like rabbits. But Lenora saw Caleb still in the canyon bottom, mounted, rallying his remnants, pointing up the cliff toward the waterfall. They will still hunt the children, she said. Shadow's triumph died. He followed her gaze. Then we run faster. They ran. The hidden trail to the Kiva caves was murder hand over hand up slick rock, through a tunnel that scraped skin from shoulders. Lenora's dress shredded to ribbons, palms bled, but she did not slow. Behind them gunfire popped like distant corn. Ahead, only silence. They burst into the high meadow as Caleb's first men reached the waterfall. The cave mouth was hidden behind vines and fern. The old ones had rolled a boulder across it, but it would not hold against CROWBARS. Inside, 30 children and a dozen elders waited by torchlight. Nakitih saw Lenora and flew into her arms with a sob. Tara stood beside Biniediju, clutching a tiny bow, ready to die like a warrior. Shadow took in the defense's one old rifle, arrows. Knives in his face went still as winter. We cannot hold, he said. Lenora looked at the terrified faces, at Tara's fierce chin, at Nakitih's fingers twisted in her skirt. Something inside her snapped into place, harder than before. She turned to Shadow. Then we leave. He stared. There is no way but the waterfall. Lenora smiled, small, terrible, certain. There is always another way. I learned it from watching you survive. She knelt, drew a map in the dust, the cave, the cliff, the narrow chimney the children used as an eagle slide when they played. I climbed the chimney, she said. Drop a rawhide rope from the top. Children first, elders last. You hold the door until the last child is clear. Then you follow. Shadow opened his mouth, probably to call her insane, but Biniediju was already nodding. It is a good death if we fail, the old woman said, and a better life if we succeed. They moved like smoke. Lenora stripped to her chemise, tied her hair, and wormed up the chimney. Rock scraped her raw. Once she wedged tight and panic clawed her throat. But Nakitih's voice floated up. Mama, I am not afraid if you are not, and she forced herself higher. She emerged on the mesa as the sun bled across the world. Below, gunfire still echoed. She knotted the rawhide, dropped it down, and began hauling children up, tiny scraped hands. Breathless laughter when they saw sky again. Tara came last among the children. When his head cleared the rim, he flung himself at her. You came back. Always, she said, kissing his dusty forehead. Then the elders. Slow but alive. The rope went slack. No more came. Far below. A single rifle spoke twice. Then silence. Na-key-tah began to cry. Soft and broken, Lenora gathered the survivors and started west across the mesa toward the sacred mountain, where even the army feared to follow. Behind them, smoke rose from the canyon that had been home, and somewhere in the dark, Caleb Mather found the charred half of a wedding photograph in the ashes and smiled a thin, hungry smile because now he knew exactly whose children he was hunting. The mesa wind came, even though October had barely begun. Lenora walked at the front, the 3-year-old girl Dagai asleep on her back, tiny legs locked around her neck. Every step ground blood into the rawhide wrapped around Lenora's feet, but she did not slow. Behind her stretched a ragged line, 30 children, 9 elders, and the ghosts of the canyon they had lost. 3 days without fire. Twice they had seen dust plumes on the horizon. Caleb's posse still hunting, tireless as hate. On the 4th dawn they reached the Malpais, 30 miles of black lava frozen into knives and ropes, sharp enough to slice a horse's tendons, hot enough by noon to blister skin through moccasins. No cavalry could cross it. No white man would try. Bini Yeti Jew looked at the broken Black Sea, then at Lenora. "This is the path changing woman took when she fled the monsters," the old woman said. "Follow her footprints and the mountain will hide us." Lenora nodded. They had no other road. They bound their feet in yucca and rawhide, filled every alia from a hidden tinaja, and stepped onto the lava. By midday the rock drank the sun and spat it back doubled. Children cried from pain. An elder's foot bled through the wrapping. Lenora tore another strip from her chemise, now little more than rags, and rebound the wound. Tara walked beside her, taking turns carrying dagais so Lenora could help the old ones. Nakitiach scouted ahead with 2 older girls. Searching for the ancient cairns that marked safe passage. At dusk they found the first body. Teenage warrior lying face down among lava tubes, an arrow through his back. Apache arrow. Someone had pulled it free and reused it. Lenora knelt, turned him gently. Not Chado, but one of the 3 who had stayed behind to buy them time. Her stomach turned to stone. Night dropped like a blade. They huddled in a lava bubble, sharing warmth, whispering stories to keep terror away. Lenora told the hawk mother tale again, voice steady even when her heart shook. At moonrise came hoofbeats impossible on the Malpais, yet there. Caleb had found ponies or forced Chiricahua renegades to guide him. The sound circled, hunting. Lenora stood at the bubble's mouth, Colt heavy in her hand, 6 bullets left. Tara appeared beside her, bow ready. "I will kill the man who hurt you first," he whispered. She kissed the top of his head. "Your arrows keep the little ones quiet. That is how we win tonight." He vanished back inside. The hoofbeats faded. The night held its breath. They walked again before dawn. By noon the water was gone. Lips split. Eyes sank. An elder woman fell and could not rise. Lenora and 2 girls carried her between them. Then Nakitiak came running, eyes huge. "Mama water." She led them to a sinkhole hidden beneath lava overhang. 20 feet down lay a pool clear as glass, a lone cottonwood drinking deep. Red and black handprints ringed the rim, thousands of years old. Children slid down on their bottoms, shrieking with joy. They drank until bellies ached. Lenora filled every vessel, tears cutting clean tracks through the dust on her cheeks. That night they slept beneath the cottonwood. Guarded by the mountain itself, Lenora took first watch. She sat with the Colt across her knees and counted stars until they blurred. She did not hear Chado until his bloody hand clamped over her mouth. She spun. Gun rising and nearly killed him. Moonlight showed ruin. Half his scalp gone. Left ear missing, blood crusted black. He swayed like a broken reed. Followed the buzzards, he rasped. Found the boys. Only me left. Relief hit her so hard she nearly dropped the Colt. She eased him down. Children woke and gathered silent, awed. Nakitiach brought water. Tara pressed dried meat to his lips. Shadow drank, coughed, drank again. His good eye found Lenora. "Caleb has 12 men now," he said. "He bought Chiricahua scouts who hate Geronimo worse than whites. They track us for him. They know this water." Lenora felt the desert tighten its fist. "How long?" "Half a day." Bunayeti G listened, then spoke one word that froze every heart. "Nakidil." The box canyon of no return. One narrow throat, 1,000-foot walls, a spring at the head. Once inside, the only way out was over the cliffs with ropes or not at all. "It is where the last free Nedni went," the old woman said. Some climbed out and lived. Most became ancestors. Lenora looked at the exhausted children, at Chado bleeding into the sand, at Tara's fierce face and Nakitai's trusting eyes. "No," she said, voice steady as winter stone. "We do not go to die." She laid out the plan, mad, desperate, born of every lesson the desert had carved into her bones. When she finished, Shadow stared as if seeing a spirit. "You would gamble every child on this?" "I would gamble everything to keep them free." Slowly he smiled, terrible, beautiful on his ruined face. "Then I will show you where the old ones hid the thunder." They reached Knockadilla at twilight the next day. Red walls glowed like heated iron. Petroglyphs of lightning and bears marching up the cliffs. They entered singing the traveling song, driving goats, making their footsteps sound like many. Shadow and the last warriors vanished into side draws with bundles on their backs. Lenora herded the children and elders to the canyon head. Behind a landslide shelf hidden by willows, night fell purple and gold dot. Then came the posse. Caleb rode first. Hatless, hair wild, eyes burning with the mania of a man who had chased vengeance across hell. 12 riders. 4 renegade scouts. They saw the goats, the spring, the fresh tracks. Greed lit their faces. They rode in dot the moment the last man cleared the throat. The rims exploded. Children too small for rifles pushed boulders that had waited centuries. Tons of rock thundered down. Horses and men vanished screaming. From hidden crevices came rifle fire. Shadow and his ghosts poured death from above. Caleb roared, rallied the survivors. Charged the spring. Lenora stepped from the willows. She stood alone, dress in ribbons, hair loose and wild. Ilias's colt in one hand, dot in the other, cradled like a child, was an old dynamite box. Fuse already hissing. Caleb reined in hard. Lenora smiled the way a wolf smiles. "Some mothers," she said softly, "will burn the world before they let it touch their babies." The fuse burned shorter, dot, and every soul in Knockadilla learned what happens when a woman who has nothing left to lose is finally given something to protect. The fuse hissed like a sidewinder in the sudden, terrible silence. 6 inches of fire crawled toward 20 sticks of old mining dynamite cradled against Lenora's ribs. Every rifle in Knockadilla was pointed somewhere else, useless. Caleb Mather's horse danced sideways, whites of its eyes showing. The remaining posse men froze. Even the renegade scouts forgot to breathe. Lenora stood alone in the open dress, whipping in the canyon wind. "Colt steady on Caleb's heart. Drop every gun," she said, calm as prayer. "Or we all ride to the spirit world together." Metal clattered on stone. 8 rifles, 6 pistols, knives. The sound of surrender. Caleb's face twisted. "You'd kill children to spite me?" "I would kill the sun if it tried to burn them," Lenora answered. And the truth of it rang off the red walls like a bell. The fuse was at 3 inches. Behind her, hidden on the willow-covered shelf, Knockadilla began to cry, small, broken sounds that cut deeper than any bullet. Tara stepped out instead, barefoot. Bow forgotten, the 6-year-old walked straight to Lenora and wrapped his arms around her waist, pressing his face to the empty place that had never carried life. "Mama," he said, loud enough for the canyon to hear, "I love you." The fuse reached 1 inch. Lenora looked down at the dark head against her belly, at the small brown hands clutching her like she was the only solid thing left on earth. And she knew. She lifted the dynamite high so every child could see, pinched the fuse between bare fingers, and crushed the fire dead. The canyon exhaled. Caleb lunged for his knife. Shadow's rifle cracked from the rim. The bullet took Caleb high in the shoulder, spun him from the saddle into the dust. The rest of the posse threw up their hands, terror turning them to statues. Lenora walked forward until she stood over Caleb. Blood soaked his shirt, but his eyes still blazed hate. "You were always Barren," he spat. "Nothing but a curse." She knelt, cut a strip from her ruined dress with his own bowie, and bound the wound tight enough to make him groan. "I was Barren," she said quietly. "The desert gave me 30 children who call me Mama. That is 30 more than you will ever have." She rose. "Chato," she called, "take their horses, their boots, their pride. Leave them water for 3 days and the buzzards for company." It took less than an hour. The posse, barefoot, hands tied with their own belts, were herded into a side pocket where the sun would cook them slow. The Chiricahua renegades begged to change sides. Chato knocked 2 senseless and let the children tie the others. Mercy and justice balanced on the same rawhide string. When it was done, Lenora climbed the rim. Tara rode her hip like a much younger child. Nakiti's hand never left hers dot at the top. Biniediju waited with the survivors. The old woman pressed a small bundle into Lenora's arms. Soft doeskin, beaded with dragonflies and rabbits. A cradle board, tiny, perfect. Lined with rabbit fur. "For the next one the desert sends," the grandmother said, eyes shining. "A woman who carries 30 through fire will never walk empty again." Lenora's throat closed. She could not speak. They traveled west 7 days, following trails no map would ever hold, until they reached a hidden valley ringed by cottonwoods and guarded by a singing spring. There they built new wickiups, planted corn, and let the children laugh again without looking over their shoulders. Years slipped by like quiet water. The army came once, led by a lieutenant clutching Caleb's blood-stained map. They found 9 bleached skeletons in Nakidil and 1 word carved deep into the canyon wall. Mama they left fast and never returned. Lenora's hair turned silver, but her back stayed straight. She taught the children to read from a scorched Bible, to shoot straighter than any bluecoat, to heal with cedar and bare root. She learned to sing the old songs in D without stumbling. Tara grew tall and fierce, a warrior with Chato scars and his mother's gentle hands. Nakith wove baskets so fine traders offered gold, but she only laughed and gave them away. And every spring, when thunder first walked the mountains, Lenora climbed alone to the highest point and left tobacco for the man who had taught her that family is chosen in fire. One evening in her 55th year, she sat outside her wickiup shelling beans while grandchildren, some born of her body after all, late miracles no one had expected, chased grasshoppers in the dust. Tara, now a man with wives and children of his own, squatted beside her. "Mama," he said, still using the word he had never abandoned. "The young ones want the true story again, about the white woman who carried 30 children across burning rocks and made the Bilagana kneel with nothing but love and a dead fuse." Lenora smiled, desert wind cool on her lined face. "Tell them this," she said. "Tell them a woman can be empty as a dry wash and still become a river when the right hearts choose her. Tell them barren is only a word frightened men use when they meet a woman stronger than their hate. And tell them the desert keeps its own always." She looked out over the hidden valley, cottonwood silver in moonlight, laughter rising like birds, cedar smoke and roasting corn on the wind. Somewhere far away, empires hunted the Apache still. But here, in this small green pocket the maps never found, a woman once cast out for childlessness grew old surrounded by more children than she could count. Everyone calling her the same sweet name. Mama. Lenora Hawthorne died on a morning when the wildflowers opened all at once, as if the desert itself had decided to bloom for her leaving, buried her beneath the cottonwoods, with Elias's colt across her breast and the little beaded cradle board at her side. Tara spoke the last words over her grave. "She came to us with ashes in her mouth," he said, "and left us a nation." Then the children, hers, theirs forever, sang the traveling song into the sky. And somewhere a hawk with wings of fire rose above the sacred mountain, circled once, and flew west. The desert kept the story alive on the wind. Once there was a barren widow no one wanted, until the Apache's children called her Mama, and she became the fiercest mother the West has ever known.